Oh, hello there. I didn't see you when I walked through the door. You must be Matt.
Oh, I believe you're Brian, aren't you?
Oh yeah, that's me. I'm Brian. What are you doing here?
Well, I thought I'd do a podcast with my Opa bro.
Are we the long forgotten Opa Opa Bros?
Will never be forgotten.
Not anymore, 'cause now we're the hosts of this show.
That's
Welcome
right.
home, Matt. Welcome home. This is More Than the Score podcast. We're the best. We're the newest podcast. Brr, brr, brr. Stolen straight from Greg Miller himself. We made it approximately 60 seconds into this podcast without mentioning Greg Miller. That was impressive. But yes, welcome, Matt, my new co-host. This is the new show. We're going to talk about reviews. We're going to do that stuff. Tell the people what they're going to get on More Than the Score.
On More Than the Score, you're gonna get more than the score.
That's the
Now,
truth.
what that means is we're gonna have our favorite MONG reviewers on who reviewed a game recently, and they're gonna explain more in depth what they thought about their game.
That's true. And they're going to tell us a lot more than the score. And actually, fun fact this week, uh, in the interviews, we only mentioned the score of one game out of the three that we talked about. I thought that was pretty good for the first week since it's more than the score.
That's how much more they're getting.
And so I'm not even going to mention the scores in this little intro section that we have here. We're just going to let you, the listener, sink in just 10 to 15 minutes of your time. That's all we ask. You're just going to listen to us talk about video games with people talking about video games. But first, before we get to that, do you want to tell the people who you are, Matt Batson?
Well, I'm Matt Batson, and I'm just a young associate writer here at Middle of Nowhere Gaming. So I'm just out there, young pup, just trying to.
Just a young pup growing up right before us. You're a young man too. What are you like? 18, 19? How old are you?
I am 18. This is getting some weird territory.
This is getting super personal.
Where do you live?
I'm not telling you where I live. Um, yeah, this is weird. All right, so
And wait, tell 'em about you, Brian Hoerst. That's how you pronounce the last name.
that is how you pronounce my last name. I'm glad that you have an easier last name to pronounce because I guarantee in the show I will butcher one last name and you will find out shortly who that is.
Yep,
Um,
already
I'm,
know.
I'm Brian. Uh, um, I'm about to turn 25. My birthday's coming up, so if anybody wants to send me some birthday presents, that would be nice. I will not
Like,
give you my address, so it all has to be digital. And you can do that through our Middle of Nowhere Gaming email address, contact.mong@gmail.com. But yeah, I am an associate editor for the Middle of Nowhere Gaming website that we are. And I like words, and I like video games, and I like talking about video games with words.
who doesn't?
That's a good question. All right. Everybody on this show today was great with talking with words about video games. So we gave a little bit longer description about our podcast earlier this week. You and I were guests on the MONG podcast, which is available on all your standard podcast services like iTunes and stuff. So you can check that out. You can also go to middleofnowheregaming.com and hear us talk about that. And we also talked about some other things like Muscle Car Online, which is a super exciting new game.
Game of the year already.
Game of the year, yeah. So, I mean, these three games that we're going to talk about, they're pretty good, but they're not Muscle Car Online.
Nowhere close.
So, who do we have on this week? I already forgot.
Well, since you forgot, I guess I'll remind you. We had the big boss, Courtney Osborn.
The
Uh,
big boss.
the big boss, and he was here talking about the game he reviewed, Dying Light, which also you'll be able to hear a spoiler cast for Dying Light this week, hopefully, and I believe you are on it.
I am on it. Yeah, I'm pretty excited to spoil some things for people.
Ooh. And then also we had our senior writer, Jake Dekker, who reviewed Grim Fandango. And not only did we talk about Grim Fandango, we also had a very nice discussion about music, and in particularly Led Zeppelin, and also Puff Daddy.
Glory be Puff Daddy and Godzilla. Godzilla!
Amen. Also, we had senior editor Harry. Oh, you made me say it.
Oh, sick burn.
Harry Loizides. I'm hoping that's right. Sorry.
Oh man. He criticized me when we said it in the interview, and I thought I got it perfect, so he's definitely going to criticize you.
Yeah.
Good enough, though.
But he reviewed Citizens of Earth, which was a really cool game that me and Brian had no idea anything about earlier, but now we do. And you probably have no idea about it either, but you'll learn and you'll buy it.
Yeah, I think it was great. You know, he talked his first like 90 seconds. We mentioned it in the interview. It blew me away. Maybe he's just a good. He could be like the used car salesman of the universe.
He was saying all the right things. He
the right things.
He could be a speed dater, an excellent speed dater with that 90 seconds.
I mean, we don't know that he's not.
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know what life Harry lives, but whatever he wants to do, he could do because he sold me on Citizens of Earth in 90 seconds, and it was great. Yeah, Jake did a great job. We talked about Grim Fandango and Tim Schafer and how weird Tim Schafer is and how old school puzzle games are awesome, and autosaves we talked about for a longer period of time than I thought we would, but it's pretty big thing, those autosaves. And then with Courtney with Dying Light, that's obviously the marquee game out of the three. But, you know, he just had nothing but good things to say, and it's a lot of fun. I also played that game, and I had a lot of fun with it, and we think that you should go buy it. We think that you should actually go get all three of these games, which is partly why I think we picked these three, because they presented three really solid games. And we're not going to be a podcast that talks about reviews and just, like, shits all over games, because that's no fun. But, you know, like, it worked out in this case that it's a little ball of sunshine, and that these are three really good games.
More than the score is going to be your happy place. We're going to talk about all the positive things.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally there will be some shitting upon of games, but only if they deserve it, you know? Only if they deserve it. So, with that said, how about we go ahead and jump in some interviews. Here's me and Matt talking with Harry about Citizens of Earth. So, Harry, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
How's it going?
I did. It's doing good. I'm just very excited to be here in this first episode.
It's a glorious place to be, and I tell you what, you're an exclusive company, because as of right now, it's just me and Matt, and Courtney, and Jake, and everybody, really, because they're all in our hearts as we do this podcast.
Oh, very nice.
But you're the most important right now, so we're going to talk about your game that you reviewed recently, Citizens of Earth. You wanna give a short little summary of that?
Sure. So, Citizens of Earth is a JRPG-inspired RPG where it was actually a Kickstarter back in 2013. Didn't hit the milestone, so Atlas decided to take it over. Surprisingly, they still kept the developer, so they pretty much just made the game only with the backing of Atlas. So the game itself is very reminiscent of Earthbound. So if anyone has played Earthbound, this is kind of like a US version of the game. So you are playing as the vice president of the world, so it's been upgraded, and you just have to kind of explore the world that you're in right now to save it. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a classic JRPG where you wake up from a bed and you're just like, oh man, what is going on? And the game quickly kind of gets you into the mechanics and gradually brings you into the storyline. So I really liked it, but we can go into more specifics once we get this intro done, which I will stop right now.
Holy shit, I've never been more sold in like 90 seconds for a game. Like I while you were telling me that, I was already downloading it. I'm so fucking pumped.
We can just wrap it up.
I mean, that's pretty much it. I don't have any questions. You hit everything.
Oh, well, I'm pretty awesome, so what can I say?
Yeah, you need to share this with everybody else. Holy fuck, man. All right. Matt, ask some questions.
Yeah, so I was reading in your review, and probably my favorite part of the review was your mention of the puns, because I'm a very big pun guy myself. I'm a very punny guy, if I will.
Mm-hmm. But, cute.
What were some of your favorite puns from the game?
I'll be honest, I don't remember a lot of them, but one of the puns or kind of references that I thought was genius for the upper level gamers was there was a bodybuilder-esque person talking to the politics, like the VP and everything. He's like, "Oh, your job looks easy. I can do it." And then I think it was the vice president. He was like, "Well, what do you think you're going to do? Become a governor or something?" And I thought that was so funny. I don't know. I just because that was like obviously a reference to Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was like the bodybuilder gone movie star person gone government dude. So I thought that was a really funny thing. And they also made some jokes about coffee, which I don't remember. It's like, well, I guess you are going to buck me out of the dollar or something, kind of like a Starbucks reference. Or maybe I'm just psychotic and I just made up these references in my head and it's just okay writing. But I'd like to think that the writers actually did this kind of things on purpose.
If not, they'll hear this, and then you can be a writer for the next one.
Yeah, hire me. I'll be a freelancer.
I mean, you've already sold like 2 copies of the game in this interview, so
if I get like 20 cents out of that deal, I'd be pretty happy.
yeah, that would be good. That would be good. So yeah, so I mean, like, you know, it's an RPG. It's $15. It's on PlayStation 4, Vita, PC, Wii U. Anything else?
And 3D.
And 3DS.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So there are a lot of ways to play. What system did you play it on?
I played it on the 3DS.
Cool. Do you think?
Yeah,
that
I definitely.
Go ahead.
Oh no, you go. I was gonna say I definitely think this is a handheld game.
Yes, that was my exact question. I was going to say,
Yeah,
do you think that it's better served? You know, lots of people like to take RPGs on the go, and so in this case, it just fits in the palm of your hand, I might say.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I haven't seen it on a bigger screen, but from what I gathered from it, it was you can play like 10 minutes of it and get a nice like flow of the gameplay. So if you want to play for 10 minutes, beat some monsters, go for it. If you want to play 10 minutes, try to recruit a person into your team, you could do that. And it's like I mentioned in the review, there's a lot of saving opportunities, both for the better and for the worse. So let's just say you have to leave, you just shut it off, close it, and then you're good to go.
Cool.
Console-wise, it's a little, I don't know. I love consoles, I love handhelds, but I think this works better with the handheld.
Yeah, and how long of a game do you think it is? Or how long did you play?
Well, I played it for over 20 hours. I'm still playing it. There is a lot of side quests. So even if you get through the main game, there's a plethora of things to do on the outside. You can literally, I kept losing myself from all the side games. Not, I guess, part of the game. Some of them were games. Some of them were surveys. Some of them were weird quests that you have to find a lost duck. But you would get enthralled in those side stories that you kind of almost forget the main story. But then you could bring yourself back into the main story. So it was actually, I mean, I also love JRPGs very much. So I thought this one was a nice, I'm not doing random things for no reason. It kind of ties into everything.
Yeah, there's always a reason to save the ducks. That's what I learned.
Well, they're ugly ducks too, so.
Well, yeah, they're always ugly.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask, well, you mentioned recruiting, like all the different characters in the game, and with there being so many characters, did you feel like your favorite characters, were they, you mentioned, hold on, I'm stumbling over this, but in your review you mentioned the voice acting. Some characters were given a lot more than others, but still all of them had voice acting. Did you feel like some were they didn't get as much spotlight as you would have liked?
Well, I definitely think the VP got, I'm going to say like 70% of the dialogue because he's the main dude. So he would have all of his language voiced over. So if you read like, "Oh man, I'm so excited to go to the beach," he would actually say, "Oh man, I'm so excited to go to the beach." Other characters like the baker, he'd just go, "Whoo, oh," like nothing really. It'd be comical, but it wouldn't really be actual voice acting. So that was something that I kind of wished happened, because that, that sounds funny. I wish I heard words from that as well.
Right, and then going off of that, who was your favorite character in the game?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Who was your favorite character in the game, like to use, and then also maybe story-wise?
Well, the baker was my favorite with those hoo-ha, just because it sounded so Swedish Chef from Muppets meets like.
It reminds me of the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Oh, maybe that was it. That kind of makes sense because he's a round, pudgy guy who wears a lot of white.
Bakers are always fat dudes. I don't know why. Fat, bald dudes make the best bakers.
Sorry for all of the skinny bakers listening.
Yeah.
It's because the skinny bakers obviously didn't bake very well, so.
That's why they're listening.
No. Yeah. They're the hopeful, the mongrels. But I think my favorite character to use was probably the barista. Just because, I'm not sure if it was early on in the game, but she was a powerhouse. That just might be me overusing her. But I thought she was a powerhouse with attacking, with the creativity of the attack. So it's like, I'm going to scold you with coffee, and I'm going to make you a drink. So, but that happened with all the characters, that each of the attacks, each of the items and skills were specifically tailored to that character's concept. So it's just like Pokemon. There's 700 of them. That's a little bit more, but it's harder to choose just one. Because I also like the mom in the game, because she was like the typical healer, and she powered up really quick. And let's just say I'm in a gym, she heals it up, and I'm like, cool. Now I can wreak havoc on the weird monsters again.
Nice. How is what's the level of difficulty in that kind of combat?
I'm going to say it's. The beginning, it's fun, and then all of a sudden, the level of the difficulty increases and decreases inconsistently. Mm-hmm. So you're going through the storyline, all of a sudden, you are nowhere close to almost like winning a fight. So you have to backtrack, figure out another route, find some comparable monsters. I don't know if that was just me over-exploring, and I was keep going into the harder spots, but I thought that was very strange that my characters would be destroying certain people or characters, and then I'd go over 30 more feet, and all of a sudden I'm losing terribly. So I'm not sure if I was missing something with certain indicators that I should be not going in this area or going into this area. But if it's the natural progression going from A to B, and I'm in between 8.5 almost, it was strange to me that it was such a weird difficulty.
Right. Interesting. And you made a big deal in your review about the glitches in the game. Was there anything particularly game-breaking for you, or was it just kind of annoying?
I'm going to say most of them are you have to restart. So that's
not good.
No, it was. That's why the constant saving was like a balancing act with it. Because let's just say you beat a boss, and then all of a sudden you're on a bridge, which is surrounded by water, and somehow you jump into the water, which is not possible at that point. Mm-hmm. And then you're just walking around on top of the water, but you can't get off the water because there's a invisible barrier between the water and everything else. So you are stuck in the water, unable to do anything. So then you have to restart because you can't move. And then there's this weird glitch every once in a while where, so in the game, you are walking around as a VP, and the three people as your main party people are walking around behind you. So it's kind of like this cute little, like, follow the leader thing. A few times, if you turn around too quickly, or if you go into a corner of a wall, you can't turn around without bumping into the other three people. So you're kind of trapped behind them, if that makes sense. Yes? Okay. So I thought that was super strange. So you couldn't move. You couldn't try manipulating the characters. You would have to shut the game off and turn it back on. So I thought that was very crazy.
Yeah, anytime you have to restart a game, that's kind of...
It's always disappointing.
Yeah, because then you're wondering how much data did I lose, or how much time did I just waste doing something, or being that boss. Now I have to beat him again.
Do you think, going back, if you were to start the game over right now, knowing that those moments would happen, do you think you'd play the game?
I would. I would just save it right before certain events happen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I know I checked out Eden Industries, the developers' Twitter, and they said that they're doing like live debugging sessions. I'm not too familiar with that, so I don't know if he's fixing it on the go for future updates, which would be fantastic. But it was interesting that they're acknowledging the glitches and they're doing stuff for them.
Sure, definitely. Matt, do you have any final questions?
Also, you mentioned earlier you referred to Earthbound, and then in the review to other JRPGs, which really got me and Brian excited. But what kind of mechanics in particular made it feel familiar in that way?
Okay, so the Earthbound I thought was very story-like, that it had it almost looked like a normal situation with people, so like a baker, a vice president, but with weird special powers, kind of like Earthbound, where there's like a samurai guy who has mystical powers, or a Daisy girl who, does all this crazy stuff. That's this thing I connected with from Earthbound. I think I also mentioned Pokemon, so that was just like, gotta catch them all, gotta recruit them all, that there's a set amount of things that you can collect that will help you or change the way you play the game. And then I think the last one I said was Final Fantasy, so the original one where you have the 4 people and you're just kind of like duking it out left to right with either magic or physical attacks or some other combination. I guess that just resonates more with me because that was one of my first, when I understood what a JRPG was in like high school, I played that game like, oh, cool, this is my point of reference now for what JRPG is. So I thought that was like a nice little trio of games that kind of blended in and created the baby of Citizens of Earth.
Sounds fantastic. I will say
Yes.
that. I wasn't sure when I read your review. It's one of those games that's like, oh, that's cute. It looks cool. I like the art style. But hearing you talk about the RPG elements, it's kind of exciting.
Yes.
So, it sounds like you would suggest it to people, but I have to ask.
I would.
Oh, you took it away from me.
Oh no!
I couldn't talk fast enough. Just words. Bleh.
He just Kanye'd you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna let you finish, but Beyonce had the best Citizens of Earth.
There we go. You heard it from Harry. Harry, how do you pronounce your last name, by the way?
Loizides.
Loizides. That is.
Good enough.
That is. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get there. Well, Harry, it's good to hear that you enjoyed the game. You wrote a fantastic review. I look forward to playing it. If I have questions or want to throw my Vita out the window, because that's what I'll be playing it on, I will come to you and I will attack you with a wooden baseball bat.
Oh.
All right. I'll just make sure I wear my metal cleats.
There you go. Spike the shit out of me, because I'm going to be angry when my game breaks. But anyway,
Perfect.
thank you for coming on, talking about Citizens of Earth. It's out on all those platforms that we already mentioned. Matt, thanks for your questions. You're the best co-host I could ever ask for.
You're the other best co-host.
We are the Opa Bros.
Opa.
All right, Harry. Thanks for coming on.
All right. See you guys.
See ya.
So here we have Jake. Jake, you reviewed Grim Fandango, and it seems like you liked it. Gave it, an 8.2, I believe? So
I think that's right. Yeah.
So tell us more about that.
So I really liked it. It's definitely really charming. It definitely has that, Tim Schafer sort of feel, great characters. It's definitely not for the faint of heart, though. If you're expecting it to walk you through this game, it's not going to. I mean, and that's probably the biggest thing I can say if you plan on playing this, is that it's tough. And it definitely takes some trial and error. I definitely recommend, looking at some walkthroughs or something if you get stuck, because the game is worth it. The story's great. I mean, the characters are great. It's definitely worth the finish, but just be ready for that, for sure.
And I was wondering, because, of course, here at MONG, we're all very respectful and we're not subjective in our reviews. But I wanted to ask, just for the discussion's sake, do you like adventure games, and do you have a lot of experience with them? And if so, did it really help with the older game in Grim Fandango?
So I do like adventure games. I don't have a lot of experience with them. and like especially recent adventure games. I think recent adventure games are very different. Like Walking Dead, it's not so much about solving puzzles as it is about getting through conversations, things like that. But then I've played, what was that old Indiana Jones game that was an adventure game? I don't remember what it's called. I'm sure someone would know.
Yeah.
But that was kind of an adventure game that reminded me more of it. But then I've also played Broken Age, which is more like this in terms of solving puzzles, but it's not that tough. It kind of walks you through it. This, on the other hand, I mean, there were puzzles where, as I said before we started, that if I didn't look it up, I could have seen myself being stuck there for forever. I mean, if I wasn't reviewing it, chances are I may have not finished it.
And how long of a playthrough did you have to finish the game?
I think it took me about 5 hours, but it ended up being about 8 because I ran across 2 bugs that forced me to restart it. One of which was at the very beginning, so it wasn't that big of a deal. The second, I was about halfway through, and that definitely threw me off a little bit.
Yeah, you had mentioned that there's no autosave in this game. Did that kind of screw you there? Just because as like modern gamers, we're so used to autosave.
Yeah, so there's no autosave. The game warns you at the beginning. It's like, there's no autosave in this game. Make sure to save. And I was thinking, okay, yeah, fine, I'll save when I'm done playing. And I played quite a bit. I ended up saving in an elevator, and then when I loaded it back up again, I was stuck in the elevator, couldn't get out. So I was stuck because I only had one save. Second playthrough, I changed that, decided to have multiple saves, save more frequently. But yeah, that's another thing that's worth pointing out is that when you play this, be wary because there's no autosave. Save, often.
Yeah, I think that's something that people, kids of the 90s may have. Like, that's something that I remember. I don't know about young people now. But the thing when we were in school and like computers were first, like popular everywhere, was like save and save often because these programs don't have autosave. And now, it's like word processors and everything have autosave on them. But I'm still used to like being in a video game. Like I just played Uncharted recently, like all through those, and I would go like every 15 minutes and save because I was so paranoid about losing progress. So I can't imagine like how many people have gotten screwed by a glitch because there's no autosave. Do you think that that's something that they should have included since this is like a remastered version of the original?
And also, piggybacking off of that, there was some criticism over not having a hint system as well. Did you feel like they should have been a little more modern with that, with having both of those included?
As far as autosaves go, I don't know if the game really needed it. I mean, it does warn you. I mean, I think it's partly my fault because I wasn't saving often, but then it's also partly the game's fault because, I mean, it was a glitch. Like, I was stuck. I couldn't do anything. As far as the game goes, I kind of like that there was no autosave, honestly, just because it kind of gave you that feel. And same with the hint system. I think it needed one, but at the same time, I mean, it does feel very pure, especially without autosave, without hints. But I could definitely see a lot of people just, stopping after a couple hours because they don't know what to do.
Do you feel like you're living on the edge when you're playing with no autosave? Just fuck yeah, this is like the pure experience.
Yeah, I was sweating the entire time.
I mean, that's all you can ask out of a game, so.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, overall, though, if you like adventure games, it's definitely worth it, especially because of the characters. And there's a charm to this game that you can't really find in today's games, at least in a lot of them. Something that only someone like Tim Schafer could pull off, really.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the latest in a long line of remasters, but it seems like before now it was relatively recent games are being remastered, but now with like this and Resident Evil, like they're really digging back some of these classic games. Like, do you think that that's this is kind of off topic, but do you think that's a good trend to bring back like games from the 90s?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great. I mean, compared to games that came out last generation, like some of those games I'm not really asking for, but I mean, especially games like this, which like, I know, Grim Fandango, a lot of people couldn't even get their hands on this until now. Like you had to get like cracked versions online and things like that. So I think it's great that they do this, and same with Resident Evil. But like, I don't know, what's the latest remaster that came out? Less like Tomb Raider Anniversary is always the one I think of.
Tomb Raider and The Last of Us and Grand Theft Auto.
And
Yeah, I mean, well, I bought all of those games. Still, I was like, do I really need this?
Yeah. Did you? You didn't play the original Grim Fandango though, right?
No, I didn't play the original Grim Fandango.
So, I mean, I think this serves a purpose that, there's probably a ton of people in our age demographic that were old enough maybe to, like, remember when these games came out, but, like, Grim Fandango didn't strike us then. But now that we're older, it's saying, like, hey, this is perfect. Whereas, with, like, The Last of Us, it's like, oh, I'll play it again because it's prettier now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the case is especially strong with this because, I mean, even people who played this game at the time, or who were old enough to, I guess, pick this game up, play it at the time it came out, it didn't sell that well. It didn't get a lot of press. I mean, it did get good reviews, but, like, I don't know, I think it sold like 100,000 copies or something like that when it came out. That's all I have to say about it.
Pregnant pause. We'll cut that out. It's fine.
One thing I was going to ask about, like, were you excited to review this game? Were you one of the people that knew about, like, all the praise and acclaim that Grim Fandango got before the remastered?
Yeah, I was excited because I'd heard so much about this game, and I'm a Tim Schafer fan. So I was really excited to actually sit down and play this. When I started playing it, I don't know what happened. I kind of lost some of my interest, but then, couple hours in, you start to meet the characters, and I was really into it.
Yeah, I was about in that same boat because I hadn't really heard of it until it was released, and then everyone was excited, so I was excited. But how I would justify it is, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with Tim Schafer's work, and I enjoy it, so naturally I was anticipating this game.
Yeah. So did you play it? What did you think of it?
I haven't started it yet. It's still just waiting on my PlayStation cross-media bar, or whatever it's called now.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
The uncustomizable piece of shit. That's what it's referred to as.
Yeah, it drives me crazy. It's just like it doesn't make any sense. Still better than the Xbox One interface, though.
That is true. Do you think that you would recommend this to someone that isn't a Tim Schafer disciple or fan?
I don't know. That's tough because the story, the characters are great. But if you're not really, I don't want to say a hardcore gamer, but if you're not like a patient gamer, I guess, then I probably wouldn't recommend it. But if you like adventure games, if you like games like Walking Dead, if you like, I don't know, if you kind of like those zany stories, then I think, well, not that Walking Dead's a zany story, but, if you like those kind of stories, then yeah, I think this game is right up your alley. But like I said, don't be afraid to look up hints if you need to, because you're probably going to need to.
Yeah, it really harkens back to the old days of like printed strategy guides and before like game facts and all that stuff came out.
Yeah, I mean, like some of the puzzles, like there's one where it's like I was supposed to take a piece of coral and like tie the coral to a string and use that coral as like an anchor, and then use that to kind of, I'm like, what? When would I ever?
From everything I've heard, it's like you're MacGyver with some of these things. It's just like don't make sense. Like, oh, here's a dead hamster and a piece of string. What am I supposed to do? Oh,
yeah.
How you do.
Yeah.
But it makes for a certain charm and aesthetic that I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it's aged beautifully. I mean, they did do a bit of remastering. They up-res the textures and everything, and you can tell that they like had a certain amount of polygons to use or whatever. But I mean, it still looks great. I mean, I think the style that they picked holds up very well today.
Yeah, and also didn't you say in the review there's a button you can switch to go back to original graphics?
I did, yes. It's similar to Halo.
Master Chief, yeah.
Yeah, the Halo Master Chief Collection Anniversary or whatever. You can hit, I think it's one. It's like R1 or something like that, and it'll switch back. I kind of thought it was pointless because it just looked like lower resolution, so I didn't play with it that often. But what is really cool, I don't even know if I mentioned this in the review, is that you can turn on a developer diary. So throughout the game, you can press a button and you'll actually get like, Tim Schafer talking about it, some other creative designers, and I think that was awesome. That I had on almost the entire game.
Yeah, I can imagine listening to Tim Schafer would make any game pretty fun to play.
Yeah. There's like one part where there's supposed to be a crowd through this door, and they're watching a race or whatever, and you can hit it, and Tim Schafer's like, huh, it seems like the character wants to avoid that area. Maybe it's because there are too many people to put into our game or something like that. It's pretty good.
It's clever. Very clever. And so it's on PlayStation 4, Vita, and PC, correct?
Yep, that's correct. Cross-buy for Vita and PlayStation 4.
And did you play on the PlayStation 4?
I played on PlayStation 4 and Vita, mostly on PlayStation 4.
Cool. Did you notice any difference between the PlayStation 4 and Vita as far as performance?
Honestly, not really. The frame rate, because it runs really smooth on the PlayStation 4. I think it took a little bit of a hit on the Vita. But for the most part, it didn't affect my playing. I still thought it was great. I prefer it on the big screen though.
And then on PS4 and Vita, you said cross-buy. Is there cross-save too?
There's cross-save too. Yeah, that's what I was doing. Was playing it on my Vita at school, playing it on TV at home.
Sweet. I am sold. It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's very entertaining. All right.
Now on to the Led Zeppelin portion of the show.
Oh, yeah, now the real part.
Yes, now that we've trapped a music fan on this show, that was the real intention for More Than the Score.
On my wall.
Yeah, I noticed. So there will be the audio version is what everybody will hear, so they won't actually see that. But just to describe, behind Jake, conveniently by his face, there's a Led Zeppelin poster. Or is that actually on the wall? That's not a poster.
Oh, that's painted. Yeah, I painted that.
Painted on the wall with Pearl Jam.
With Pearl Jam above that, and then I've got Radiohead to the left and Jimi Hendrix to the right. But
I've got to say that Radiohead doesn't really fit in that little foursome.
It doesn't, but
hey, to each his own.
Yeah.
I respect that. I was just thinking, what am I going to listen to today? Maybe some Pearl Jam. Get my Eddie Vedder on, or maybe I'll just like melt faces with Jimmy Page. And it's like, maybe I'll listen to some Radiohead and just really think about life.
Don't forget Hendrix.
Yeah, and then Hendrix too.
Don't forget Hendrix.
To melt your face again.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Zeppelin album or song, I guess? Song's kind of tough.
Song is kind of tough. I don't know. I was always a big Kashmir fan.
Yeah.
Something about that just like, it's very repetitive in your face, just, it's such a strong riff.
Yeah.
And then Puff Daddy ruined it.
Wait, did he? Wait, what?
I forgot about that.
So in the Godzilla 2001 movie set in North America, Puff Daddy he took Jimmy Page's riff. I'm pretty sure Jimmy Page is like, he plays the riff for this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just on a loop, that Kashmir riff, and then he's just rapping at Godzilla.
He's rapping at Godzilla.
Yes, yeah, like the whole thing is he's fighting Godzilla. Godzilla's destroying New York City. The only hope is P. Diddy. He's got to defeat Godzilla with his rapping and Jimmy Page's guitar. And it's pretty bad.
Did it work? Wait, spoilers, but did it work? Did P. Diddy win with his words?
I honestly, I'm not sure. I assume he did, because he's P. Diddy.
That's true.
But yeah,
Godzilla should just squash him. Like, starts rapping, just squash him.
That's what I wish would have happened for all of humanity. Honestly, I would deal with Godzilla for the rest of his life instead of P. Diddy. But fun story about the Godzilla movie. I guess it's the same one, but the Foo Fighters are my favorite band. I'm a big Dave Grohl kind of guy, and I
saw them. Dave Grohl lives near me. I've seen him around town a couple times, actually.
Oh my God.
Really?
Yeah, he lives in Ventura. I've seen like his family and stuff. He seems like a really cool guy. I haven't talked to him before, but everyone says he's super chill.
If you want to be best friends and invite me out, I would totally come to California. So, but for a Godzilla movie, they made the song called A320, and it is like by far one of the like most beautiful Foo Fighter songs, but nobody's heard it because it got stuck on this shitty, terrible soundtrack, and they couldn't buy the rights to it to like release it on their own.
Wow.
83. I'm gonna have to look that up. I love the Foo Fighters. I haven't heard that before though.
Yeah, it has like a big string section to it. It's really pretty.
That sounds pretty cool. I'm gonna have to look that up.
But it's no Kashmir. So, what about you? What was your favorite? Do you have a favorite album, song, etc.?
10 Years Gone is usually the one I fall back on a lot. But
Yeah.
I mean, anything off 4, anything off 2, anything off Houses of the Holy. I mean,
I think it's pretty much consensus that it's not Led Zeppelin 3. That is not the best. Or Coda. Coda is not the best.
yeah, Coda's pretty bad.
Everything else you can make an argument for.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. Well, cool. I don't want to like, monopolize people's time with Led Zeppelin talk. You are always welcome back to talk about Led Zeppelin, even if you don't review a game.
You can just show up.
Yeah, I'm just the next time we do an interview for next week, which we'll be talking about like Majora's Mask and.
Oh, I'll be reviewing that for another site too. So.
Really? Well, we will invite you in. You can have a second perspective on Majora's Mask, and then all of a sudden we'll just start talking about Led Zeppelin.
You can debate it.
So,
yeah.
do you know who's reviewing Majora's Mask?
I think it's Lucy.
So
Yeah,
when Lucy's talking, hopefully she's a Led Zeppelin fan, and we'll find out.
If not, it's going to be a long podcast for her.
It's gonna suck. She might want to mute the microphone and walk away. But we will cross that bridge when we get there.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, guys. That was fun.
Hey, thanks for coming on, man. Hey there, Courtney. You're now on the podcast. More Than the Score. Welcome.
Yay! I'm here. Episode 1.
The very first episode, the one that will go down in infamy.
Yeah, I
The
hope
one
it's not
that
because
we'll
it's
listen.
bad.
The one that we'll listen to a year from now and be really embarrassed about.
Yeah, but that's okay.
We all
So-
have those episodes.
We all have episode 1. Even Star Wars had an episode 1.
What if
I
we
like to
just
think-
entitled it episode 2?
Ooh.
That's a good one.
And we can
Or we
have.
can start with.
We'll set it
So
up.
we can start with 4, 4, 5, and 6, and then go back to 1, 2, and 3.
And we'll set it up with previously on More Than the Score, and they'll just be like, "What? I have to listen to the old ones."
Yeah, that's how we force listeners, is by confusing them.
Yeah. Or we just scare them away.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Both
I
work.
mean, look, we're already like 2 minutes into this, and we don't even know what game you're talking about yet.
Talking about Dying Light.
Dying Light.
Dying Light.
Tell me about Dying Light, Courtney.
Tell you about Dying Light. Okay.
Seems like you like
For those who don't know, Dying Light is an open-world zombie action game with parkour elements. So like it's got climbing like Assassin's Creed, but way more intuitive. It's got a story. It's kind of like what's the game? Dead Rising or Dead Island. It's one of those games where there's just flooded with zombies kind of game, and you could just murder them all day long. That's basically it.
And did you play Dead Island, which Techland made?
Yes, I did. I actually played Dead Island last fall, so it's still pretty fresh in my brain. I can compare them very closely together because of that. Had I played it originally, I probably would have forgotten a lot. But I've played it recently, so.
Do you think it's a big jump from Dead Island to Dying Light?
Oh yeah, huge jump. Dead Island, it was a fun game. It had its fans, but not a lot of them. It's not a hugely popular game because it has faults. There's technical issues. Anytime there's several zombies on screen at once, you get slow down and skip frames and things like that. And the voice acting was terrible. The story was barely there. Dying Light it basically capitalizes on all of that. Like Techland took everything, all the bad feedback they got from Dead Island and improved it. There was no slowdown whatsoever in Dying Light. I played the game for probably 60 hours now, maybe more than that, and I've never once gone through any slowdown. And I've been in areas with 50, 60, 70 zombies at once. When you go up onto the bridge, there's zombies everywhere, and I never had an issue with that. And the graphics are beautiful, the storytelling is way better, the voice acting is phenomenal. There's a huge difference between the two.
Mm-hmm. Matt, would you like to ask your first question?
Yeah, so towards the end of your review, you mentioned that you hoped that this took off as a franchise, so I wanted to get your ideas for what they could do with the sequel.
Yeah, I really haven't taken the time to flesh out that idea. It's one of those things where, without going into, I can't touch on any spoilers here. Obviously, we are going to do a spoiler cast on that, which will probably be out before this episode.
Yes,
may or may not.
We are.
But it's hard to tell. It's hard to talk about where it could go from here without talking about the end of the game. However, I do think that this series could continue in other cities and do similar things like they did with this one. It doesn't have to be in Haran anymore. It could be literally any other fictional city or real city in the world, and the zombie apocalypse could be happening, and there could be some secret mystery going on where you have to, figure out what it is. And they could easily do that because, while there is a story in this game, it's not The Last of Us. There's not a Joel and Ellie that we're attached to. There's not people have questions about whether or not that could continue as a franchise without those two characters. While, Roger Craig Smith, the main character in this game, he plays a great character, but we don't have to see him in a sequel to that because you can get attached to him, but it's nothing like Joel and Ellie. So, this could pick up, and this could be a world story where the apocalypse is happening in just random cities, and just pick up a different story with a different cast of characters, and it'll be just fine, because the gameplay element is what is best about this game. And as long as you give us zombies to kill and buildings to climb and run and fun weapons like airstrike and stuff like that, there are people who will continue buying these games.
Sure, definitely. And you talked about, Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us. Kyle Crane is the protagonist in this game.
Yep.
Tell me about him.
Okay, it's, at the beginning of the game, you really don't know anything about him. You know that he's a GRE operative, which is the global relief effort, and he's dropped into the city, and he needs to find some information for the GRE that was stolen, and so he doesn't know what's in the city. We don't know what's in the city. He lands, and then he figures out that there are people there trying to survive, that they're not turning into zombies and stuff like that. And he sees that they have real problems, and so you go from not caring about who this character is to really starting to pull for him, because he starts facing these moral choices of, to save the people, or, work for the GRE, do what they're wanting and stuff like that. And you do grow to care for him, or at least his story and what he's doing, and you want to see his story to completion. But again, it's not it's not Joel and Ellie kind of characters. You don't get that much character growth, or his story is not fleshed out like theirs is.
Would you say his story is like how you would have a created character in a lot of games, so it just reflects yourself?
Yeah, you don't really have a lot of choices. So he faces choices, but they don't really give you the choice enough. There's no branching storyline or anything like that, and there's no dialogue options or anything. He's just a badass character, obviously, because he can do all the stuff in the game, and he's hilarious because he gets put in some situations and he, makes jokes about it. But I don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
I guess. But what I was gonna say would probably be a better example is more like the recent Far Cry games, since they're trying to dial down personality, so it immerses you more. So it's like that. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one of the things I really liked about Crane is that he's very lighthearted throughout the whole game. He takes everything going on very seriously, but he'll still make these little comments that are just kind of I connect with that character.
You see, it reminds me a lot of Nathan Drake in Uncharted.
Definitely.
Drake is a you can connect to him because he gets put in these outrageous situations, but like when he's about to fall off a cliff, he'll be like, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit," and then he laughs whenever he doesn't fall, and he's just like, "Wow, that was close," Crane is exactly like that, but in this game, and it makes this game so much more fun. When you add in the crazy weapons to his funny personality, it's a really outrageous game. It's not as outrageous as Dead Rising. It's much more grounded. It's much more serious than that series. But it's really funny. I really enjoyed his personality and him as a character.
Yeah, I think he's a great character. I think the story itself it's fine, but the characters in the game are great. But what we really want to know out of every zombie killing game is tell us about killing the zombies.
Killing the zombies. See, I really enjoyed the melee combat in this game. Obviously, you can use guns, but using guns is a really easy way to get yourself killed. This game, unlike most other zombie games, if you make sounds, you alert all the other zombies. You alert the strong ones that come to your area. And so you can craft all these different melee weapons. You can upgrade them. You can pick up melee weapons everywhere, and just beat the living shit out of zombies. Zombie after zombie after zombie. You can blow off their arms or hit off their arms. You can knock off their heads. You can knock off their legs, and they'll start crawling with their arms towards you. These zombies are really responsive in combat. If you hit a certain part of their body, it reacts. Unlike other games where if you hit their head, it acts like you hit them in the stomach or something. This game really reacts to combat really well, and it's fun because you can use swords and bats and let's see what other crazy weapons are there.
Cricket bats were my
favorite. Cricket bats, in the early. Yeah. That's another one. There's different kinds of swords. You can add electricity to your weapons. You can add fire to your weapons. You can add poison to your weapons. All of those have different effects on the zombies. There are different zombies that have strengths and weaknesses that you have to learn to adapt to, especially when it's the first time you've seen them. There are outrageous weapons, like you can have throwing stars, and the farther you get in the game, you can upgrade them, and you can have exploding throwing stars or fire throwing stars, and it becomes fun to just run around with a pack full of exploding throwing stars and just launching them like crazy at just hordes of zombies running at you and just watching them explode and fly off in different directions. The combat is really, really fun in this game.
One thing that I think you had mentioned earlier, and I wanted to touch on, was the length of the game, because from what I've heard, I haven't played the game, is that it's a really, really long game. And so one of my big problems with Dead Island is how the gameplay would feel, really repetitive and formulaic after a while. And do they have the same issue here with the length of the game?
See, I've always had an issue with the length of a game argument because it depends on what kind of gamer you are. If you're the type of gamer who wants to see the story and just see the story through, you could beat the game in under 20 hours. And by that point, it probably wouldn't be repetitive whatsoever. If you're the type of gamer that's like me, I play all the side quests, I go exploring, I pick up loot everywhere, and I take 60 hours to beat a 15 to 20 hour game. And even then, the combat didn't get boring for me. I feel that Dying Light is able to get past that because of the deep upgrading system and the change in the level of weapons. Like at the beginning of the game, you'll find a lot of wrenches to use and random tools to use, hammers and stuff. And you're like, okay, these are cool weapons. I'm kicking ass right now. But then, a little bit further in the game, all of a sudden you find like a sickle. And now you can chop off zombies' heads, and you weren't able to do that before, And then you find a sword, and you're like, oh man, now I can chop them in half really easy. And then you find a bastard sword, a giant two-hand sword, and it's just like the further you get in, you just keep getting these new weapons, cooler weapons, and it keeps the combat fresh. And so, like, it doesn't matter, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how long you play the game, the combat shouldn't get boring, or it shouldn't feel stale.
Yeah, I started to feel more like the Highlander in the last like couple missions because I had a sword that there's a side mission you do that you get this like upgrade for a weapon, and it adds fire damage and electricity damage called the Angel of Death.
Angel Sword.
Yeah, or the Angel Sword, and you just like it's like one hit kills on everything, and you're just chopping heads left and right, and especially in the last missions, there's so many things to kill that you just start to feel like Highlander. I really enjoyed that.
And another good example of showing you like the depth of the combat and stuff like that is I've heard several people have beaten the game, and when they beat the game, their highest level weapon is like an attack power of 200. When I finished the game, my highest level weapon, its attack power was over 1,000. And so, like, and that's not even the max. You could get your weapons up to attack power over like 2,000, and by that point, you're destroying the biggest and baddest zombies in like one hit. And it's just like you just got to keep playing and keep finding new weapons and finding new upgrades, and it just goes so much further than some people give it time to flesh it out.
Yeah, a few minutes ago you mentioned the side quests, and side quests were great for me. I found that the more you did those instead of just hammering on the main quest, like the more badass you'd feel. Like you get all those badass things from the side quests. But you mentioned specifically in your review the Mother's Day side quest with Ghazi. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
I mean, yeah, okay. So there are very few games have fun side quests, or at least funny side quests, and Techland really nailed this in this game. There are so many of them that are just, if you pay attention to the conversations going on, they're hilarious. And the one I pointed out in the review was Mother's Day, and it's just, you interact with this guy named Ghazi who's not completely there, and he's pretending that his mother is still alive when you already know that she's dead because somebody had told you about it. And so you go to get medicine from him that he's still been collecting for his dead mother, and he tells you to go out and get some chocolate and a movie because you got to celebrate Mother's Day or whatever with his mom. And you come back and you find out he has all these pillows stacked up on his couch with a pot on top of it and a face painted on it, and then on the pillow it says "World's Best Mom," and he's been pretending that's his mom for God knows how long. And it's so hilarious, that moment when you walk in the door and you see that on the couch next to him, and you're just like, what? Like, oh man, it's just, this game is really good.
Your life for that.
Yeah, and there's another one specifically I could point out, like. There's a guy in his house, and he says that he has his wife in there who's giving birth, and you've got to go and get alcohol because you need to sterilize, or he needs to sterilize the room or something. And so he has you go get alcohol like 6 or 7 times. You bring back like 20 bottles of alcohol. Come to find out, he doesn't have a wife in there who's pregnant at all. They're just getting drunk as fuck and singing. And as soon as you get in there, you find that out, and they are just hella wasted, just singing really, really obnoxiously. Like it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, Techland was so good at creating these characters that you'll remember. And like I'll never forget the line, if mama ain't happy, or wait, what is it? If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just like, it's just little things that stick like that. Like games like Grand Theft Auto are packed full of side quests, but you can so easily forget most of the stuff you do. But Techland made sure that, one, side quests were super long, and two, that they had very unique characteristics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may be running across the city to pick up some medicine or pick up a bat or pick up some keys or something like that, but they're going to make it memorable because if the conversations that get you to and from there, on the radio or with somebody you interact with, they make them fun because you want to know what's going on and why you're doing what you're doing. Awkward.
I'm gonna cut out the awkward pauses.
Okay.
We'll just leave them all in.
Matt, do you have any other questions before we get to the last little bit?
No, I think you covered all of it.
Okay. So, Courtney, it sounds like you've enjoyed talking about Dying Light. It sounds like you enjoyed playing Dying Light.
Oh, yeah.
So how would you sum up your experience, and would you recommend this game to somebody else?
I would sum it up as being one of the better games I've played in the past few years. One of the more polished open world games I've played. One of the most fun games I've played. It's, very few games I will think about while I'm not playing it. And Dying Light has had that effect on me. I've constantly been thinking about it. Even now, even after beating it, even 2 weeks later, I still want to play multiplayer. I still want to play co-op. I still want to do all that stuff whenever the trophies get fixed eventually. Like, I think about it all the time. I'm like, I need to check the Techland, forums. I need to find out if they're fixed so I can go play with Brian because I blew him off all last weekend.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
I want to play this game so much, and I've put in like 60 hours, like I said. So I absolutely recommend this game. It is a very, very fun game. Even if you don't want to pay attention to the story, if you just want to go out and kill zombies and run over buildings and stuff like that, like this game has it all. It is so much fun. Yes, I would recommend it. It's a very good game.
Excellent. And then I hope everyone listening to this runs out right now or just goes to their PlayStation or Xbox and downloads it.
If you don't already have it, go buy it, damn it.
That's the final word. Matt, we're talking to you.
Now.
Get out of here. You're done with this podcast.
I'm leaving.
All right.
I'm leaving.
Mom?
I'm going to go buy it.
All right. Thanks, Courtney. Don't forget, by the way, to
Mom?
check out the spoiler cast. That should probably already be up by the time you listen to this.
Yeah, hopefully it'll already be up.
And you can get all your spoilers there before you hear the review. Mong.
Mog?
Well, that was a fun ride. Thanks again to Harry, Jake, and Courtney for talking with us today. Next week, we will have the reviews for Evolve, Majora's Mask 3D, and Monster Hunter for Ultimate, not Monster Hunster.
Monster Hunter.
The old British man who listens to the show, #1 fan of More Than the Score. He's who you strive to be, people. And starting February 23rd, episodes will be going up on Mondays instead of Fridays.
And you can email us and contact us and do all that stuff. And I've got some information for you. So if you want to shoot us an email with your questions, comments, and concerns, you can do so at contact.mong@gmail.com. You can find our Mong Twitter account at mong.com, spelled out DOTCOM. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/mongnetwork. You can find us on Facebook, Tumblr, and Instagram. Or you can just come visit the website at middleofnowheregaming.com for all of our latest editorials, news, and, most importantly, the reviews. So thanks again for everybody coming along. Matt, thanks for being a kick-ass co-host in this first episode. I hope you guys enjoyed.
Thank you for being an ass-kicking co-host.
I mean, that's just what we do. People are going to have to get used to it. There's a lot of ass-kicking going on these days.
That's what I like to say, taking ass and kicking names.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Also, I wanted to add, if you
yes,
us,
most importantly.
Well,
yeah.
this is the other important thing that I just thought of. Emailing questions to us. Since you know what games are coming next week, you can email us your questions for the reviews if you have any. And then also, big shout out to my boy Danny Griffin for the sick as fuck intro music.
Sick as fuck.
And if you agree, you can follow his band at After Landmarks on Twitter.
I'm going to do that right now.
He's doing it right now, and so are you. You can find Courtney, who is on today, at Osborn_2009, Harry at IllGrillChill, Jake at Jacob Deck with 2 Ks at the end, myself at _ Batson, and Brian.
I'm at El Padre Oso, Spanish for the Papa Bear, so you might need to do a little translation on that one. But you can find me, and you can find Matt, and we'll be back on February 23rd with episode 2, and then forever and ever and ever afterward on Mondays.
We're not going nowhere.
Not going nowhere except into the future.
Well, that concludes this episode. Thanks for listening/watching.
Thanks, guys. See you, Matt. It's been great.
See you, Brian.